Good afternoon, Doc.
How are you, Doc?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. How are you?
All right. No, there won't be any echoes today.
I'm glad that at least we troubleshooted and managed to find the source.
Yes, it was worrying me. It was worrying me.
Nah,
but we have to go live now.
Thank you. I'm ready.
All right. Thanks. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Joining us via multiple social media channels, Facebook, YouTube, and the Dr. Fundi platform. My name is Dr. Fundi Lenyati, a specialist family physician and a healthcare entrepreneur. Thank you and welcome on joining us. Today's conversation is on indigenous knowledge systems, what is normally referred to as IKS, and the research work that has been done on the various indigenous plants in the country. Our special guest today is Professor Mutlalipula Matsabisa. For those who don't understand Sutu, Mutlalipula is the one who brings the rain. All right. He is the director of the Indigenous Knowledge Systems Unit within the Department of Pharmacology, School of Clinical Medicine in the Faculty of Health Sciences at the University of Free State. Prof, welcome to the Dr. Fundi platform.
Thank you so much. And it's really a pleasure for me to be here and to participate in your discussion about a topic that is really key, I think, for Africa and the Africans.
Yes. Now, Prof, I still need to share more about you. Please bear with me because I want the viewers to know that, you know, what you've done already in this space. So if you don't mind, just one more minute, I just want to share a little bit about you.
I get worried, but please go ahead.
All right, Prof. All right. Prof Matsabisa has got a PhD in pharmacology from UCT. His research interests are in pharmacology of traditional medicines and medicinal plants. He is involved in research, discovery, and the development of medicines based on traditional knowledge and medicinal plants. He works closely with communities and traditional healers to look at ways of ensuring that there are fair and equitable models of sharing the benefits from the utilization of the natural resources. He's also involved in assisting the communities with entrepreneurial ventures so that you know, they can be able to participate in the economy relating to what has been, you know, discovered in their areas. So one would say Prof is involved from end to end, from research all the way to the discovery, you know, quality issues, safety issues, you know, effectiveness issues, all the way to taking the stuff in the market, including the protection of that intellectual property. He has got many scientific publications to his name. He's got 7 patents of compounds that have been isolated from medicinal plants with anti-malarial action. He has trademarked and protected his research work and prototypes for immune modulators, indigenous teas, and cannabis. He serves on many structures, the boards of many scientific journals, member of the Complementary Medicines Committee of the South African Health Products Regulatory Authority, Vice Chair of the CMC Pharmaceutical and Analytical Committee, member of the expert group set up by SAPRA to regulate African you know, ATMs, member of the Ministerial Committee on Cannabis. He has served on the National Department of Health Traditional Health Practitioner Council, chairing the clinical research. He's worked with WHO, he's worked with the World International Property Organization, and he's also worked with SABS. So I think Prof is the right person to help us, educate us a little bit about what has been happening in this space. When we were briefly discussing, you know, on Saturday, I mentioned that this interview is more of an awareness educational type of conversation, you know, where I want him to help us to know where South Africa is as far as IKS, Indigenous Knowledge Systems, and more specifically in terms of research relating to, you know, the indigenous plants. One would say the announcement by Madagascar last week was actually a blessing in disguise, in the sense that it has increased public attention and media attention to this important work. And I'm happy about that. At a personal level, Prof, I said I'm a family physician. Now, when I was doing my master's in family medicine, I decided to do you know, a research on the use of traditional healers by urban Blacks. And the reason for that was that as a practicing medical practitioner, I would find that people would present to me late, having started with traditional healers. Or they will come to me, I give them what I thought would be five-star treatment. They go and see traditional healers. Or they would take both treatments concurrently. And I used to ask myself, what is the reason behind this dual consultation? So when we were then told to come up with topic, the one thing that bothered me was, who are these traditional healers? What makes them to actually, you know, be so powerful as to take some of the patients that I thought we were giving the best Western treatment available, you know? And so that is my interest, Prof, on IKS. And also at this moment, I'm working with the University of KZN, the psychiatry department, to submit my concept note on the role of African spirituality in mental illness. So this is an area of interest to me. So that's why I really I'm here to be educated. And I hope many other people who will be listening will also be in the same boat. All right.
Thank you so much. That's really very, very interesting, because I have a similar sort of background that when I was a little younger than I am now, one of the things I wanted to do was I wanted to become an orthopedic surgeon.
Yes.
And then I somehow changed that, because one of the things that had always sort of had an interest to me was exactly your question, to say, why are we so much entrenched into traditional medicine use? And therefore, I then changed and said, I need to find really the reason. You know, do these things work? What could have been, sorry, what could be driving people to continuously use traditional medicine? So that was really where my interest in the pharmacology started. Yes. To begin to say, I need to find the reason, I need to understand why. And at that time, there was not very much, I think, research done on traditional medicine. At that time, it was a taboo, you know, to be associated with traditional medicine. But I remember my first sort of lecture when I was asked to talk to medical students at UCT. My question was, each one of you in your lifetime as medical doctors, you will be, I think, encountering traditional medicine related issues. And if we don't talk about this, how are you going to address these things in real life? And really that was the stimulus to say, we need to begin to look at traditional medicines. But now, what is indigenous knowledge systems? What is traditional medicine? Yes. When we talk about knowledge systems, you know, we talk about different types of knowledge systems. Science is one knowledge system. So we're all talking about subsets of knowledge systems. Yes. Indigenous knowledge system, it is that knowledge system that is really based on the utilization and the generation of knowledge by yes. communities, for communities, over generations of time. And that knowledge gets entrenched into us, gets entrenched into our beliefs, and gets entrenched into our cultures. Hence, it becomes so difficult then to dissociate who we are as Abantu, you know, from what we are beginning to be told of a new knowledge system. Then this then drives us to begin to say, you see this oscillation of patients coming to see, you know, Western trained doctors in a best available healthcare, but the intrinsic beliefs and the intrinsic understanding of the culture keep telling them, we go back to our roots because that's where we understand our being. And that keeps driving us. But when we go back to traditional medicine, then we have this other aspect of uncertainties. Do these things work? Am I going to get benefit out of these things? Because these are not well researched, these are not standardized. And then you move away back to the hospital because you are beginning to say, I'm not so sure whether I'm going to get a benefit out of it. Yes. But when you get back to the hospital again, you find a system which actually is not that comforting. A system that is under pressure, doctors are very busy, they have no time to be actually sitting, going through with you, you know, in terms of your trouble. And then you again get that dissatisfaction and you want to go back. Yes. So this then brings back this whole aspect of the interrelationships in terms of health, where patients would use herbal medicines, but because they are not that much convinced about them, then they would go to the Western trained, I think, hospitals, but their culture keeps sending them back. So our research then wants to go back and say, how then do we research traditional medicines? And we refer to them, I think, at one stage as African traditional medicines, the ATM that you were referring to.
ATMs, yes.
Yes, because I think at the time it was a political thing to say you have Chinese medicine, you have Indian medicine, what we call our own medicines. And then that was, I think, the word coined to be African traditional medicines. But these are all natural products. Then we're saying, can we develop a research system that in fact can bring confidence to the consumers? Where when I take a bottle of traditional medicine, then I could actually say, I have confidence in the quality of this product. I have confidence in the efficacy, you know, how effective this will be for my condition. And I have confidence in terms of the safety. So we want them to look at it and say, at any given time, if I take a traditional medicine, it must be safe, it must be effective, and it must be of good quality. And that's where our research really tries to focus. And for us to do that, Doc, is then to work together with the knowledge holders, because we do not want to disenfranchise them by taking their knowledge and using it for our own purpose. But we want to say, come work with us. We develop, we train, we learn from each other, so that at least we can then have our own medicine system being recognized globally and playing a part in our economies, and in fact, being recognized internationally. That is what we want to do, and then move away and say, how then can this medicine contribute to our secondary economies? How should they contribute to wealth generation? Because we see a lot of countries like China, like India, where in fact they have begun to utilize their medicine for their economic benefit. We have not done that in this country, and that's where we need to move to. That was just my background.
Thank you, Prof. You actually, you know, because as I was looking at the questions that I needed to ask you, the first part was just for us to understand at a basic level what IKS is, you know, what ATMs are. Now, if we look, you've just mentioned, Prof, that in China, you know, they've got Ayurvedic medicine, and there are even universities of Ayurvedic medicine in India. And if you go to China, they have got, you know, when you want to do medicine there, you choose whether you want to do Western medicine or you want to do Chinese medicine. Both programs are available within their medical faculties, you know. If you look in South America, in some of the institutions, they've got what they call it shamanic, you know, IKS. And the big question is here in, you know, in Mother Africa, there's been, you know, those century-old knowledge, you know, systems, and how do we also leverage them, you know, for the betterment of the health and the wellness of the people of the continent, to ensure that there's safe, effective, you know, quality products from here. Now, from your position, Prof, because you sit on a number of structures, our country, what is their strategic position in relation to, you know, IKS and maybe policy?
Yeah. I think as Africa, because of colonialism, we were always believed to be told that traditional medicine was, I think, a thing of the pagans.
Yes.
It was something that we should not be proud of. It was something that needed to be destroyed completely. That's why we had the Witchcraft Suppression Act, because it was believed to be witchcraft, because we did not understand it. But also I think around the 1600s, because all medicines started somewhere from natural products, you know. If we were, for instance, to go to any health facility or to any hospital, 25% of the prescription medicines that we have in this world are derived from plants. We know also that medicines that treat human diseases, they treat 90% of human diseases. But the sad thing was, we believed through the 1600s, when the advent of organic chemistry came in, that we could actually do everything in the lab. So therefore, we do not need, you know, the knowledge, we do not need the plants.
Yes.
But that in fact has taught us that this was not correct. We came to a cul-de-sac. So we are now catching up as a continent. We are now catching up as a nation to say, let us now begin to recognize our traditional medicine system. While in fact, other countries like Europe, like China, you know, they have actually advanced because they believed and they continued to research and develop those. So in South Africa, I think, you know, in most African countries, they have developed now some policies. For instance, in South Africa, we have now an Indigenous knowledge systems policy, which sets out, I think, you know, the landscape in terms of where should we go in terms of the protection, the development, and the utilization, you know, of our Indigenous knowledge systems.
Yes.
So that policy exists, but I think subsequent to the establishment of that policy, a number of things happened, including the establishment within the National Department of Health of a program on traditional medicine. And that program's aim is really also to look at traditional medical practices and develop a policy. And the result from that office, which sits, I think, in the Department of Health, was the establishment of the Traditional Health Practitioners Act.
Yes, yes.
Which then sets the standards to say traditional health practitioners, like any other medical practitioner, they need to then be regulated, and they need then to have a statutory council, like your health professions council, like your nursing council, like your pharmacy council. So there was then, I think, this move, which in fact I was part of, I think, you know, that committee up until last year, where we were now beginning to say, let's formalize the practice, okay?
Yes.
So it's looking at the practice, not the medicine. We are saying,
yes,
let's begin to say traditional health healers must be registered. Traditional healers must be accountable, you know, to a body. Traditional healers must then be accountable to their patients. And that was then the establishment of the interim traditional health practitioners
council, yes.
Yeah, which was to regulate the practice. and to look at the scopes of practice of traditional healers. That
Can
process,
I just,
okay.
Yeah, just on that, Prof, is that the Act 22 of 2007?
That's Act, I think, yeah.
Yes, 22 of 2007.
Yes.
And by the way, just as a detour, why were the faith healers not included? We've got herbalists, you've got the diviners, you've got the traditional birth attendants and the traditional surgeons, and also the people who train Amatwasana, including Amatwasana, but the faith healers were excluded there. Any particular reason?
I think each process has a developmental stage. Okay. It was easy to recognize the other, practitioners. And I think it was a bit also difficult to say, how then do we recognize faith healers? Because how are we going to say, you are a faith healer, you went through this process, yokutwasa, to become a faith healer? They were mixing up two different disciplines. And therefore, I think, for us as a learning curve was, let us start with the simple ones so that we have a foundation and a basis to develop the other, scopes of practice. So it was really based on us saying we need to learn. There are things that we do not understand. So let us begin one step at a time.
Okay, it makes a lot of sense.
That's that reason. It was not that there was any other, issue that they are not recognized or whatever. It was purely to say, let's start one thing at a time. This is a difficult, area that we are getting into because most of these things are not written. Most of them, they are verbally transmitted, orally. And for us to begin to accredit a traditional healer, how then are we going to do that? And those are the things that are crippling in terms of, registration processes.
Yes. Now that makes a lot of sense.
There are no schools. Like, for instance, you mentioned China.
Yes.
China, traditional Chinese practitioners, they don't go through an initiation school like us here. That's where the big difference is. They go through university. They do not have a calling to say, you have a calling, therefore you need then to go through the traditional Chinese medicine. It's like me saying I can afford to go to university and I have a particular interest on Chinese medicine, so therefore let me go and do Chinese medicine. Africa is slightly different. There are no universities. The universities sit with traditional health practitioners, there's no formal education. And hence in that act, we were then also then saying we need to begin to recognize those schools, the Amatwasa. We need to recognize, Okobela, who are the trainees, and start to formalize, and register those schools. The same as in India. They modernized their traditional Indian medicine. And then after many, many, many years, then they came up with philosophies and theorems around the practice and established what we know as Ayush. Ayurveda, Unani, and that's a modern type of traditional medicines. They still have their own indigenous traditional practitioners in India who have not gone through that Ayush training. And that's, I think, why we are saying we need to learn from them. How have they taken up traditional medicine and formalized it?
Now, obviously, in the South African context, Prof, when you look at this IKS space, and specifically around African traditional medicines and all, there has to be collaboration between various government departments, national departments. I'm thinking here about health, science and technology, and maybe environment. Is there that collaboration?
Yes, in fact, there is, because traditional medicine, indigenous knowledge systems spans through different disciplines. I'm sitting here talking about indigenous knowledge systems for health.
Yes.
I'm only doing health aspect. But there is indigenous knowledge systems for dancing, for music, you know, and things like that.
Yes.
So you'll find that the Department of Science and Innovation would be more focused on the innovations around indigenous knowledge systems, the science of it.
Yes.
You know, how do we develop it? Health looks at the practices, the medical aspects of it. You know, how then we bring our traditional health practitioners to get into our health systems? How do we do that? But then you'll find that there's aspect of, I think, conservation. Department of Environmental Affairs is more concerned that we have close to 300,000 traditional healers in this country who use medicinal plants, who use animals, who use marine things. And if all of them use those things, these things are going to be extinct. They will disappear. How then do we begin to regulate that? That's where environmental affairs and forestry comes in. But then we have another department, arts, you know, culture, in terms of traditional songs, traditional dances, the music and things like that. So there is, in fact, I think it's an intergovernment communication in terms of indigenous knowledge systems. I know, for instance, also, you know, your traditional leadership are part of this whole thing, because when we go to Uyoluka, you know, circumcisions, IKS plays a role there. How do we, I think, traditional healers play there? In maybe we mentioned those traditional surgeons. So it's very important that it becomes a seamless, I think, you know, communication and implementation of policies, so that there is no, I think, disjuncture in terms of one aspect or one law saying something against the other. But to agree, in fact, government is working very hard to synchronize everything that's been done through traditional medicines. Hence why within the Department of Science and Innovation, it used to be called Science and Technology, they established the National Indigenous Knowledge Systems Office. It's called NICSO. It has been there for some time, and its really mandate is to protect the interests of, I think, knowledge holders, and to safeguard our traditional knowledge systems, and come up with a national, you know, archival system to record our indigenous knowledge systems, so that then we can have a defensive protection mechanism, you know, against exploitation and bioprospecting.
Yes. So you are at UFS within the pharmacology, you know, we'll call it faculty of, is it pharmacy?
No, it's Department of Pharmacology.
Oh, pharmacology, yes. I'm sorry about that. Now, you also have the medicine, you know, I'll call it where they train medical doctors. Is there any working together at that level, at an institutional level? Some of the knowledge that's coming through from your side are the medical students that get trained in UFS, you know, getting the benefit of what is coming through from your side?
Yes, indeed. I sit within the School of Clinical Medicine, so we interact with them. In fact, pharmacology has a teaching for nurses, and within the University of the Free State also, I think there is a School of Allied Health. So we try our best, you know, to interact and talk through. I think, you know, we have seminars that we have done a number of seminars to, I think, the faculty and to, I think, the students, so that we begin to say, let us look at this knowledge that we have, because this knowledge, in fact, does impact on the health, and we cannot ignore it, and we cannot wish it away, but we need to find a way that we put it back and say, how does it contribute to, in fact, our health system? Remember, when I started, I said, people have this belief that natural things, one, are safe, which may not necessarily be true. But also we're beginning to see patients taking their own, I think, charge of their own health, making their own decisions now to say, I would rather maybe go and get a herbal product than get this thing. And there is this move globally towards natural.
Yes.
So therefore, it is important for us, I think, as people in the faculties of health, to begin to introduce teaching, of traditional medicines. So I teach postgraduate students in pharmacology, traditional medicine.
Yes.
So it is now a program that is, run, where from your honors level up to your PhD, we teach them the pharmacology of traditional medicine.
Yes. Wow. Okay. Now, research, Prof, there's always a lot of money that's required to drive research. And sometimes the will to do the research is there, but the funding is limited. Now, as South Africa, or maybe as the African continent, how are we doing there? Are we getting adequate funding so that we can be able to advance the research in this area?
You'd be surprised if I tell you that almost every university in South Africa does, one way or the other, some research on traditional medicine. African universities, they have departments of pharmacognosy where they do research in traditional medicines. Yes, indeed, there is a shortage in terms of the funding for traditional medicine, but I think that shortage could be turned around if we as researchers in traditional medicines could do responsive research, if we could do, I think, research that is relevant, to the needs of our community, where in fact communities can begin to recognize the value that universities are putting into traditional medicines. So we need to begin to look at how then do we begin to do needs-driven research, where universities are told this is the key thing that needs to be done. These are the things that we need to address, and we need to form up, I think, these collaborative initiatives, consortiums, so that we do not all go and start competing on a small pot, and therefore for the government to try and please everybody and start underfunding. Because once you underfund science research, you are setting it up for failure. So instead of us doing that, we have been, in fact, very fortunate that the Department of Science and Innovation has got a program on indigenous knowledge-based technology, I think, innovations, where they've put in different universities together and to work towards a common goal. And those universities are working, I think, in conjunction with traditional healers. They're working in conjunction with communities. And the goal really is for us to say, can we come up with products? Can we come up with good quality, safe products that could actually put traditional medicine in the South African map, that could actually put African traditional medicines in the global map? Now, for us to do that, we need, therefore, to come up with these products so that our political, I think, principles can begin to see that, in fact, the research that we want to fund has got tangible things. It is fair and good for researchers to publish, but there's something completely different if that publication cannot generate an income or cannot improve the quality of life of an ordinary person in the street, because we're using government funding. And that's where I think the tensions come in between the political principles to say we are funding, but we don't see. That's where the tensions come between communities and traditional healers saying we are funding, but we do not see. Are the researchers therefore funded for self-empowerment and for self-development? Or are we funded so that at least we can improve the quality of life of ordinary people? That's where we need to focus our research.
Well, I think that could be a challenge there, Prof, because some people, they do research so that they can be cited. How many citations, rather than what you've just mentioned at the end, in terms of improving the quality of lives of other people downstream. Now you've got bodies here in South Africa like SAPRA, South African Health Products Regulatory Authority, and SABS. How closely involved are they in the work that is being done? I know in some of these you actually also play a role, but just at a broad level, as regulatory authorities.
Let's start with, I think, the relationship, and the platform that has been set up by the Department of Science and Innovation on technology-based indigenous knowledge, which has brought all, I think, the different universities and the traditional health practitioners. And based on, in fact, something that I nearly forgot, that through, I think, the DST's white paper on research, one of the things they talked about there was the bioeconomy strategy. And the bioeconomy strategy really was there to say, how then do we develop a pharmaceutical industry based on our natural resources? And that's where we want to address through that. And through that program, working with communities and traditional healers, where they bring in the knowledge, but the focus is to develop products, but the focus is to develop entrepreneurs. So we train, I think, these traditional health practitioners and communities, send them through the incubation, I think, at the innovation labs, where they begin to be trained in terms of aspects of how then do we become an entrepreneur? How do you begin to commercialize your knowledge? But also what is important for us is how then do we begin to collaborate with researchers, but also collaborate with medical doctors and collaborate with nurses. So what that then has really happened through that was then to begin to say, South African standards, Bureau of Standards, can we come up and have some standards set up, for traditional medicines? And those standards could be standards in terms of the design, of the products. It could be standards in terms of the planting of these, trees and things like that. So SABS is now involved in fact, training traditional healers and training communities in terms of the markets, in terms of the design. How then do you take your product and make it presentable? How then do you take your product so that it can be an attractive product amongst other products out there onto the market? So that's what they're looking at. We are looking at the science to say, is this good quality? Is it safe? Is it, stable enough, so that at least we can keep it for long? We know that traditional medicines are being prepared mainly in water. They would last, I think, if we are very fortunate, about 7 days or so. But then we're coming and say, how then we add value to that so that at least there's a shelf life that's more than 24 months? How then do we take this so that, Dr. Fundile, when you are in your office and you have your bottle of traditional medicines, you do not put it under the table, because if your colleagues see you with this bottle, they don't want to come into your office again. But we're saying we want to take that bottle to be proud of, so that even when I go through the airport, it's regarded as a medicine. And something that I should not be ashamed of. Because we want to change that mindset and say, when I drink this bottle, I drink it with pride, because I've got confidence in it, because the science has told me that this does work. Now, but then we're saying, if we do that, we need to have the markets. We need to get this onto the markets. And that's where SAPRA comes in. And I think we are now into discussions with SAPRA to say, SAPRA, let us begin to have discussions in terms of market authorization, market registration of these products. We don't want them to be sold, I think, behind closed doors. We don't want them to be sold, at night. but we also want them to contribute to the economy. What should we do? That's where aspects of safety, quality, and efficacy come in and say, what are the minimum standards that we need to look at, to say this thing is safe? What are the minimum tests that needs to be done? Now, I always say, even to traditional healers, it's not that we do not believe you when you say this thing is safe and you have used it for centuries. But is that what the market wants? The market wants assurance that if I take this, it will not kill me. But also, the shop where you want to put your products. I always say, take, for instance, you want to put your product at Clicks.
Yeah.
The reputation of Clicks would be at stake if you put a product that is not safe, that is not of good quality.
Yes.
They put something onto their shelf and tomorrow there's litigation to say, I bought this thing from you and now it's giving me diarrhea.
Yes.
You don't want that. Therefore,
and some of us, when we work in hospital or even in our practices, somebody tells you that they've got some herbal concoction, and then the next minute they've got kidney failure or liver failure, because the dosages are not clear. The instruction is given, go and mix this and that and that and that, but the dosages sometimes could be quite high and they cause the toxicity. And I think the issue of safety that you're talking about is because such things are the ones that bring a bad name to some of these preparations.
Correct. I mean, we really are saying traditional healers are not abatakat. They are not witch doctors.
Yes.
They are the healers. So they will always want to do good. But I think the aspect that we have just mentioned here about dosages, the dosages are there, Doc, except that unlike pharmacology, where when I say 50 milligrams of Panado, I know it's standardized from one area to the other. The dosage is there, but it becomes a personalized dosage.
Yes.
Because the traditional healer will say, I take this amount and I mix it with that amount. Okay? That's a dosage. It's unlike pharmacology where it's now a uniform dosage.
Yes.
But we are now saying to them, that is fine when you do that. Let us help you to convert that now into what Doc is saying, into a standardized dosage. So I can take that handful of yours together with that bottle of brandy that you are mixing it with and work out, in fact, now a uniform dose that will be applicable to everybody. And that's what we call now your unit dose. And that's where we want to move our traditional medicine to. But if we do that, we also avoid one other important aspect, of, those toxic sort of things that could come inadvertently, where they may not be aware that the way they prepare these things, in fact, could bring about, impurities that are toxic.
Yes.
But also, what is important to go back to what we are saying is in traditional African medicine, we are beginning to say, let us begin to write, I think, about the theorems, why do traditional healers take that plant and mix it with that plant? What is the rationale for that? China has found a way, India has found a way that in fact, certain plants, they've got certain traits. But with us, if you do not find umhlonyani, they find a substitute. And that's where the problems would come in. And also the other problem would be the misidentification, of plants. And I wanted to talk about that when I talk about the Madagascar thing, because
we're about to get to that one.
Are confusing that plant in Madagascar and what we have. So we will talk about it. So we are now saying to SAPRA, if SAPRA, you could then establish up a committee that would look at the clinical evaluation of traditional medicines in a controlled environment. Now, when a traditional healer says, my medicine works, I always say, yes, it works, but it was in an uncontrolled environment. Now, let me take you one step further. I said, if you are desperate, you are sick, you have a chronic condition. I come and Dr. Fundile says, here's a bottle from my traditional healer. Please take it. I take it. And then I have an uncle somewhere in Johannesburg who says, hey, I met another traditional healer there. He says he's very good into that. Now, because of my desperation as a patient, I will not say no. I will take that one. My mother-in-law in Port Elizabeth says, hey, I've heard about someone. He is very good. So in the end, when you do get better, you actually don't know what actually was the medicine that actually worked, because you have been trying a number of things. So that is very important for us then to set up minimum clinical studies that are controlled, so that when we say it is your medicine, we indeed know that it is your medicine.
Yes.
That's important. And also we can begin to monitor, you know, the safety of these medicines in the actual patients. Yes. Because traditional healers will say, no, I've tested it myself, I drank it, it is okay, but you are not a patient. So your health condition as a patient is slightly different from someone where we could do a safety study in a healthy individual.
Yes.
So even though we may say, I've done the safety study in a healthy person, a phase 1 clinical trial, I still need to do safety in a phase 2 study in the actual patient and determine now the correct dose. And those things are very important for us to bring that confidence that we are talking to, that we need to create confidence on the use of traditional medicine. So SAPRA, we're saying, have a regulatory framework so that then we can produce products, we can then register these things, and then we can at least have our traditional health practitioners also maybe creating up their own SMMEs.
Yes. Now, let's get to the Madagascar thing. I said at the beginning, you know, in a way, it brought attention to, you know, some of the work that you are doing. Now, last week, I had so many people asking me to give opinion around the whole issue in Madagascar. And initially, I refused because I felt I didn't know much of what has been done there to give a sense of, are they onto something or are they just claiming? But, you know, I eventually managed to get some information about their product CVO. But my interest was, what was the science behind? What studies were done and all of that? And as much as I thought maybe it's promising, but I was not comfortable with the studies, you know, the sample size, the duration of that observational study, and all of that. And I mean, it's easy, you know, to sometimes claim certain things. So anyway, so I want you, Prof, to just share with us your thoughts around the CVO product that President Rejolina sold to his colleagues at the AU, which was immediately taken up by the president of Tanzania, Guinea-Bissau, Equatorial Guinea, and others, because they felt, well, there's an African product, just tell us when to send our aeroplanes to come and fetch it. But somebody who is a true scientist worries because there are still certain steps that need to be taken before you could actually say something is a cure or not. Sure. You know, so Prof, I just want to hear your view, you know, but that's one of the things that I thought today my viewers want to hear from somebody of your level.
Yeah, thank you so much. I mean, we as you have just mentioned, we don't know much in terms of actually what was done in terms of the science, you know, that then came to make the conclusion that CVO, you know, would be in fact a cure. for the coronavirus. Now, in medicine, Doc, you have something that's preventative, you have something that can just manage the disease, and you have something that can actually cure the disease.
Yes.
So out of those three, we are still not very clear. Okay, how then did they come to say it cures? A small observational study, when you do an observational study, whether it is a clinical observational study, you are then watching and saying, I want to see if there's going to be a trend. And if there is that trend, this will then help me to go and do a bigger and more controlled study. It does not say, because I see a trend, and that trend sometimes has some gaps into it.
Yes.
Okay. Therefore, because a observational clinical study is not a control study, you have these people doing whatever they are doing at home, taking these, maybe the CVO, whatever they did, but you are not in fact in control in terms of what else they are taking when they are at home. So we would be very interesting, I think, to begin to understand and say, this is the study that we did. This was, the duration. This was the inclusion and exclusion criteria. This is the safety profile that we got, and these are the results. That I do not have. But I'm going into the background where I would say, what is it that we need to take a herbal product from the bush into our clinics? We do simple tests, that should not take us long. One paramount thing is we need to make sure that this product is safe.
Yes.
Safety, that's paramount. Safety is better than even your efficacy. And then how then do you determine safety? You can do that in the laboratory where you have what you call, you have some cells, you test those, and then you then move that to maybe a lower animal, and then you can then say, at least I've seen either in a lower animal or even in a higher animal that this product was safe. That result gives confidence to the people that would want you to participate in that study, that at least something was done that showed that this product is safe.
Yes.
If I were to be asked that here is a bottle of traditional medicine, we are looking for people to participate into the study, but in fact, we do not know what it is. We do not know its safety profile. Would you please give consent, informed consent to participate in the study? My answer would be literally no. But if you come to me and say, this is what we have done, these results indicate a potential. We have also looked at the safety, and it is safe, it then consoles me to say, at least let me contribute to the science and then do that. You can then do a phase 1, which is about 32 weeks, quickly, and 32, not 32 weeks. It's a short study, 32 days, where you look at the safety, rigorously looking at, major organs, looking at your blood, looking at your biochemistry, and do it properly. Then you can then look at a phase 2 study. It's a very small study where now you are taking up the patients. Now with the Madagascar, I'm not so sure whether they had, the COVID patients, how many they were. That's another issue.
Yeah, they're talking about 20 patients, but yeah, and I'm sure you guys will get the information.
We'll get that information. So you then look at that and say, are there any benefits, out of this study? And what would be the benefit? The end point, therefore, would be to say, patients who have been on this product, they were cleared of, the coronaviruses. Their quality of life improved. That's your end point. That's what you want to look at, over and above your safety profile.
Yes.
But as I said, that research is very, I think, hidden somewhere. Very little has been said about it. But what I want then to go back to relate that to what is happening at home. I understand everybody keeps saying, hey, let's go for Umhlonyani.
Yes.
Hey, let's get Lengana.
Lengana, yes.
But it looks like the major ingredient in the CVO is Artemisia annua.
Annua, yes.
We do not have Artemisia annua.
Yes.
Artemisia annua comes from Asia.
Yes.
That's where then they discovered the drug artemisinin.
Artemisinin, yes.
Yeah, for malaria. Okay. But in Africa, we have Artemisia afra.
Yes, and vulgaris.
And vulgaris and absinthium, something like that, but not annua. Yes. So when people look at Artemisia annua, that the guys in Madagascar used, they should not translate it and say Lengana. It's not Lengana. Lengana is afra. They may be in the same genus.
Yes.
But they are different species.
Indeed.
Yeah. So we need to be careful. Now, if on the other hand, we said we have done desktop research, for instance, the difference between, your annua and the afra are the molecules in there.
Yeah.
Okay. We do not have the artemisinin, but we know that our great-grandmothers have been using Lengana and putting Gadingong, and doing all that. Yes. And it's claimed to have been used for fevers.
Yes.
Okay. We can take it from there and say, if this is the case, let's do proper research.
Yes.
And follow that one up. Now, the artemisias have got certain molecules, and those molecules which are common in all artemisias are called the sesquiterpenes.
Yes.
Okay. And then they will differ in terms of where the plant is and how it's being grown. But in general, there will be those. For instance, in the African one, there are two special oils. I think it's the 1,8, I think it's a Seniol and the 2-June. That's what we know in our Lengana.
Yes.
We need to look at those and say, can we do now a study to see if when Artemisia afra was claimed to be used for umkhuhlane, the fever, can it work here? Without quickly jumping to say it does work. Similarly, I would think maybe Madagascar should have done the same thing, but I think my message to everybody is Lengana is not the same plant that's being used in the CVO.
Yes.
Yeah, we just need to be very careful about that one.
As much as our Lengana Umhlonyane is not the one that actually produces artemisinin, that is now first line for malaria.
Perfect. Our Lengana does not have the artemisinin. I have personally worked on it to look at it when I was doing my PhD. I think, in malaria, you talked about the patents that I looked at. There was no artemisinin in our Lengana.
Yes.
So maybe there's still hope that we could find something. I mean, there's nothing to say plants could not do that. For instance, you know that on the H1N1, okay?
Yes.
The drug that came out of there, in fact, was a plant-based, plant. I think it was a Chinese small shrub, Tamiflu.
Yeah, okay? Yes, Tamiflu, yes.
Tamiflu. Yes. It comes from a plant. So there is nothing wrong to say, while we are still trying to find a vaccine, which will not come tomorrow or next week, let's also begin to do research on the plants. They may give us some solution. Yes. But what is important is, before we quickly jump into conclusion, let's do proper studies so that we do not create unnecessary, I think, anticipation. We do not create unnecessary, what's the right word? You know, how to say you know,
yes, no, but I hear what you say.
Yes, you know, you don't want to.
You don't want to have unmet expectations because
exactly,
people
the
think
hope.
that
Give people the hope, and this thing does not work because it will do more damage, you know, than telling the people that don't use it because it will not have any benefit to you, than saying continue using it and then there's no benefit, and then it will go back to what you were saying, that I will then continuously use this thing, but instead of getting treatment where I can get treatment, I get delayed because I have this hope that I will get better, while in fact it will not help me. But I'm not throwing away the benefits of traditional medicine. So all I'm saying is, let us do it right, let us do it properly, so that at least we can have confidence in the science that we have done, we can have confidence, in fact, in the products that we are developing.
So the work that you have done personally on anti-malarials, you know, I'll put it just broadly like that. You know, I think it's 7 patents that you've done there. It's stuff that has been proven at the lab or in clinical studies, that they actually do what you wanted them to do, to a point where it was important then to actually patent them for when you decide now you want to have your manufacturing plant.
Yes, what we worked on was actually not Lengana, because we couldn't find, I think, you know, Lengana. A lot of work was done on, you know, malaria. Now with malaria, what we do, we grow the parasites that cause malaria in the lab. It's Plasmodium falciparum.
Plasmodium falciparum, yeah.
Yeah, we grow it, and we can then test the effect of the plants and the extracts up until you get to a stage where you say it is this extract, and then you begin to say, what is it in that extract? And then out of, I think, those extracts, then we identified those molecules. So we have now identified the molecules. We know what they are, we know their structure. And then we also have then tested those molecules on, you know, the mouse model, where we have now infected the malaria parasites in a mouse, and compared that with chloroquine, and see which one has a better, I think, preventative and to clear off the parasites. Because one of the things we're looking at was parasite clearance over a given period of time, and also the safety. And those molecules, in fact, were at the time slightly better than, you know, the chloroquine, because we found that on the animals that were treated with these molecules, they lived longer compared to those that had chloroquine. Now, malaria is a very dangerous disease, because if it's not treated, you die within 7 days.
Yes.
It's serious. So if we showed that we actually prolonged, I think, the life of those animals for up to 14 days on treatment, while in fact chloroquine did that less than that, it was a good reason for us to say, one, these molecules are novel, so they were new, they were never found before.
Yes.
Okay, so therefore we then had patents. I think we had a South African patent, we had a PCT, we have a United States patents, we have a Chinese patents on those molecules, and we have also a European patent.
Beautiful.
Now we're stuck in one small thing. How do I then get patients and say to them, I'm going to inject you with a malaria parasite. And test my unknown molecules onto you. Now, malaria is a disease where if you live in a malaria area, you have what you call, I think, you know, partial immunity. I mean, you get beaten and then you just kill these things, and then your body develops immunity. It is the reason why children under the ages of 5, tourists, and pregnant women are the most vulnerable. They get killed by malaria because they don't have that immunity. But someone who's in a malaria endemic area, you have a partial immunity. So it bites you, it won't kill you. So we then wanted to see if we can find a country that would then partner with us where we have people that have partial immunity. Now, South Africa, we don't have malaria per se, except on the borders with, I think,
Mpumalanga, Limpopo.
Mpumalanga and there, but also it is a seasonal malaria. It only happens in summer, you know, after that it gone, and people don't have that partial immunity I'm talking about. So that was my biggest challenge to say, how then do I take those molecules forward? But we are still working on them. We have created a nanoparticle, you know, for a delivery system to improve on the, I think, you know, the delivery, to improve on the absorbance of those. And we still are hopeful that we will one day, you know, find a partner, maybe talk to the malaria medicines venture and see if they would be keen to look at those molecules.
Yes, yes,
but that's one really, I think, case where we said traditional medicines can still play a very important role, you know, if they are well researched. We are working with communities in the Eastern Cape, in the Northwest, where we have developed up, I think, you know, some teas, where we are actually saying, let's begin to commercialize these and have alternatives to your rooiboses, you know, to your jocos and five roses. And they have actually got so much, I think, acceptance by the market that we are now at a stage where we are now going to go to Ekwahwa in the Eastern Cape and say, we are going to help you as communities to start a plantation, you know, to grow these things, stop picking them in the wild, because then we can help you standardize your tea and the quality of that. And to me, that is where science says, how does science plow back to communities?
Oh, are you thinking about the Magua tea area in the bottom?
Not the Magua, not the Magua. These are purely new teas. If I were to...
No. I'm saying the plantations was the land there is already used to planting teas.
Yes. The land is there. I mean, tea is I always make a joke and say, when we drink rooibos, not rooibos, five roses, joku, Earl Grey, it's all one plant, Camellia sinensis. It's all one plant, does not matter. And then it's then oxidized. And then someone comes and say, I have a Chinese green tea.
Yes.
It's the same plant, not processed. That's just how the market is playing with us. So now we're saying, can we bring alternatives? Totally different teas, not of the Camellia sinensis. And we have put those teas and say, let's add some health benefits. And we market them to say, I am not drinking tea because it is tea time. I'm drinking tea for a reason. Because I can get a health benefit out of that. So, but we want those plantations to be owned by the communities themselves. And put up infrastructure there to say, we'll teach you how to harvest, we'll teach you how to process and incubate you so that you can begin to talk to the market. That's what science should be doing. It's not about me getting the citations, getting a promotion to be a professor, and while my professorship has no impact on the communities. That's what we need to change in this country.
So now, besides stuff that has got medicinal or health benefits, you know, I mean, there's also other plants, indigenous plants that are said to have, you know, I'll call them, they call it culinary properties. They are used, you know, as part of food making and stuff like that. Have you done any work in that space?
My work is focused on just health, and I lead the DSI, I think, you know, a group on health. I know that at the University of Pretoria and the CSIR, they are doing nutraceuticals. And they are looking at those, you know, food-based, you know, miroho, you know, traditional miroho and things like that. There's also another group that's looking at, you know, cosmeceuticals, for
Yes.
cosmetics and things like that. So plants
Yes.
can play many, many, many roles,
Yes.
not just in health, but also
Yes.
as food. We always understand that food is your medicine. What you
Yes.
eat is what you are.
Yes.
So we believe that if you eat right and you can have these really good traditional vegetables,
Yeah.
we want to bring them back and say,
Yeah.
when plant, your tepes, all these other mirojos that we used to eat during our time.
Yeah.
And forget about the ones that are too much processed.
Yes.
So CSIR, I think, and I think also the University of Venda, they are looking into the nutraceuticals.
Beautiful.
That's where also your moringas, fall in,
Yes.
as not just for health, but as a nutraceutical.
Do you know of anyone who is working on umpeso?
What's umpeso?
Oh, okay. Sorry, Prof. I assumed that you know umpeso. The guys from Limpopo, Kazankulu, Venda area, they will be very familiar with a herbal plant that's called mpesu.
Okay.
It's claimed to have properties that are even better than the blue pill. For erectile dysfunctions. So when you've got these big conferences, political conferences, is one of the products that sell quite a lot because people they are in middle to late age and they want to boost their abilities to.
It's all about their blood flow.
Exactly.
Yeah, Doc, we have had so many of those types of medicines, but again, whether these are real things that real work or whether it becomes a placebo effect,
yes,
that needs to be tested, that needs to be proven. But we hear a lot about people saying, oh, in Vusankunzi, and things like that. Yes.
All right, Prof. Now, just coming back now to, you've touched on this already, working with communities, getting them to have a piece of the pie. How easy or how difficult has it been? Because already, there would be trust issues, around these people. They want to come and take our, knowledge, and we don't get much out of it. So how easy has it been for you to actually engage with communities, or what has been your formula to get them to believe and have confidence that you are actually working for their benefit as well?
It has not been easy because to build trust, it takes time, and to do that, one has to be open, genuine, down to earth. Put yourself in their shoes.
Yes,
that's the most important thing, is because we always argue and say traditional healers are secretive, traditional healers don't want to share, but we have not looked back and say, why are they doing that? They're doing that because they've bent their fingers somewhere, okay? For instance, there's a study that was done some years ago by Farnsworth, where he showed that, in fact, the pharmaceutical industry, they increase their leads to find leads from 1 to 10 to 1 to 4 by working with communities. But the royalties that trickle back to those communities, it's 0.0001%. It's negligible. And hence why, for instance, now the Department of Environmental Affairs came with the National Environmental Management Act, which talks about bioprospecting, that you can't just go into a community and get the knowledge and get out. There must be free, fair, prior informed consent, so that these communities voluntarily say, we want to work with you and we know what you are going to be doing. So what I've done, I think, over the years was one belief that I had that my laboratories will not be complete laboratories if I do not have a laboratory of a living laboratory, which are the traditional healers.
Yes.
So I needed to bring them in, to work with them, and be as open and as genuine as possible, and come up with research agreements that would see them being part of our decision making. So when we have a research agreement, we establish up what we call administrative committees and the scientific committees. So they sit in our administrative committee so that they know the planning, they know where we want to go with the project, they see our frustrations, they see our miseries, they see our successes. But then also we have a scientific committee where then they sit with us, where we try to make science interesting, to make science simple. We speak science in simple English because it is possible to do that. We don't want to talk to ourselves, but we want to talk to them so that they understand. And then with that, one thing that we actually, some years ago, we asked them and said, what is it that you would want to get from us? They mentioned 6 things. It was, we need to be taught about research collaboration. We need to be taught about intellectual property. We need to be taught about business development. We need to be taught about project management. And we need to be taught about infection control. So based on that, we said this is what they need, because it would be futile for me to go to them and start being arrogant and say, today we're going to teach you about this thing, while actually they don't need that. So out of those 6 things, we developed up 6 training modules where we run workshops and we train them and we talk to them. And we also talk to them about research. We talk to them about project management and some financial management. Because the problem that also comes is if I sign a research agreement with a traditional healer, tomorrow I get a research grant. Sometimes the whole thing changes because money can become a destroyer of things. If people do not understand how that money comes in and how that money gets used, it will destroy the relationship. So we talk to them about how does money come from a grant, into a university, and how then do we use that money? It's not like money that comes to me in a check. I get given that money, and I said we get a blank check. Say you use it, you claim it, and then you account. So there is no physical money sitting in my office.
Yeah.
But also what we have done, to build that trust was when somebody comes to us and say, I want you to research my medicine. We asked 2 questions. Why do you want to research it? And most people will say, because I want it to be available to the larger market. Then we go through the process of research and drug discovery, explain the process and say this is not something that can be done overnight. It needs patience. But also what is important is to give them the feedback. Sometimes we're very careful not to give them results, written results, simply because sometimes people then tend to use those results wrongly and misinterpret them. But we'll rather sit with them and help them to understand what the result means. And then the other thing then that we'll then do would then be to have them as part of us, to work with us right through. When I need to go and get a plant, because, the other thing would be to say, they do not come and disclose to me their formulas until I am certain that I will get money for research for that formula. Because if they were to disclose and I come back and say, sorry, I did not get the money, I'm literally building a mistrust to say, I told him what I work on, now he's telling me that he does not have the money. So I'll rather say, if the chances are good that I would have the money, Then we will give them a record keeping form and say, you go back, do what you normally do, help us record what you're doing. Record the patients that come, what they come with, what you see, and that's those observational studies. But we know that when they come to us, we are not expecting a fully fledged clinical trial.
Yeah.
But it is for me to see an indication, a trend, then that I can go to the funder. I see a trend here. Now I want to do this research and do it in a formal way.
Yes.
Once the funder says to me, we're happy, we can give you the money, then I would go back to say, what is it that we are working on? The reason we now ask that question is, maybe, Dr. Fundile, we already have taken something from you, exactly the same from you. And now somebody comes with exactly something like that. We need to disclose to them and say, there is someone who was here before you that we are already working on, so that we start that process right there, even before we start.
Yes.
Because we don't want in the end, because our agreement then says, if then there are going to be royalties and benefits, we're going to publish it up in a government gazette to say, on such and such a year, on such and such a date, and such a healer came and disclosed this to us. Anybody that would have a similar, I think, claim should come forward so that we resolve that. So we'd rather resolve it in the beginning if we say, you are coming with CVO here, we are already working on CVO, so we'll not take it.
Yes. And by the way, the stuff that the Madagascans have come up with, there is an agency in Germany that's working with a company from Kentucky in the US that actually produces those plants, and researchers from Denmark. And they are collaborating on exactly the same Artemisia annua, to try and see what its effect is on COVID-19, but they are choosing to do it the proper way.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, a lot of research will now go on and focus on the plant, because there is no treatment for COVID-19. So a lot of research will focus on that. But the unfortunate thing would be the research gets done in Europe, the research gets done in the Americas. I was having a virtual meeting with WHO Afro, talking about Africa. What are we doing, in terms of, the response to COVID? Yes. And one of the things I said was, because everybody was saying, we need to send samples to South Africa, you have got the facilities and all that. I actually said, I actually don't need samples. I need people to come with their medicines. We work together. I don't need samples, because I can do that and then send them back. I have not transferred any skills. I have not transferred any technologies. So you then become dependent, on someone else. And that's what we really want to see. I think Europe do the same thing. If they want to work on Artemisia annua, let them have researchers spend time there, work on it, and then see what they could do, so that at least they can transfer what they have learned back to Madagascar.
Our president has actually offered that South Africa assists Madagascar, with regards to CVO. Do you see that coming to fruition, the working together, the collaboration?
We're open to collaboration. I mean, Doc, if I were to tell you, I collaborate with almost everyone globally, whether you would say South Korea, China, UK, Germany, Chile, Brazil. I work with people, because no one institution or one person can develop a drug from the beginning to the end alone. But it is how you set up that collaboration. I would say in principle, we have no issue collaborating with Madagascar. And I know that CSIR has a standard agreement with Madagascar. But I think what the researchers are now asking is something simple. But we have our own plants. We have our own Artemisia afra. Very little investment research is put into that for the COVID.
Yeah.
Why should we now refocus ourselves to Madagascar? Yeah. And that's a genuine question. What are we doing ourselves here to develop our own and move forward than then saying, come help Madagascar? But that's a view of, I think, of the researchers. I listened when the minister made that announcement, and we are still to find a formal communication, either from, I think, the minister or from Madagascar or the embassy in terms of that. That has not come through to us. I know I spoke to Dr. Chabalala about it. He has not received such a formal communication.
Yes. So how do you see the future of research in indigenous plants of South or Southern Africa? You said earlier, people were a bit reluctant to be associated with this type of work. Do you see that people are becoming much more open-minded and eager to actually conduct this type of research?
I think the whole world globally is now opening up to say, let's research traditional medicines. Let's find new, I think, leads from traditional medicines, and that includes South Africa. So there is now that move to say, let's do something about our natural, I think, resources. Let's protect our natural resources. Let's begin to develop that industry, based on our natural resources. And I think that movement is being supported by trade and industry. It's being supported by health. It's being supported by the Department of Science and Innovation to say, let's put more investment into the research and the development. I'm also very fortunate that I think I see that the Department of Higher Education, in fact, gave me money to employ. They called what the end gap, where they put in money so that you take a student, train that student, and then you can actually take that student as a staff member once they do their PhDs. And they've given me one. So it was great to see now that even higher education is beginning to say, you are in this field, here's money, develop students in this field, and then absorb them once they are completed. And the university has done that. So it's really great that we are now getting into that mode of saying, let's look at our natural resources. But also what is important is we want to do it right. We want to do good research. We want to good peer-reviewed research that can be challenged and be defended by science.
Yes. Oh, Prof, I think I've taken actually more of your time. We're supposed to end at 5 o'clock, but actually we're almost at 5:30 because
I don't believe it.
Yes, we've just been going on and on. So, Prof, what next for you in this space?
For me right now really is to leave a legacy. Yeah. For me is to develop the young ones, and take, the struggles that we had in the research and the development of traditional medicines, and realize that we can in fact do a number of things, that we can put our traditional medicines and our science research, into the international platform. We can develop up, I think, an industry that is reputable, that is controlled, that does good R&D to create jobs, based on our indigenous knowledge systems. Maybe one day we'll talk about cannabis, because that's another thing.
Yeah, we're gonna talk about that one.
Yes, because that's
I left it deliberately.
Yes, I didn't want to touch it up until deliberately now, because I didn't want us to get into it. But really, that's what I want to do, develop young scientists in this field, so that at least we can bring good reputation to the traditional medicines, so that in the end, we can then have our own traditional medicines at par with Chinese, with the Indian systems of medicines.
Yes. Now, Prof, I want to thank you for your time. I think anybody who has been listening, because you took us through nicely, you know, from where things used to be. You even took us back to the 1600s, you know, during the time of the organic chemistry and everything, all the way to where we are with COVID and CVO. And obviously, the other big area is the whole thing around the data plant. We now see at almost every mall, there's CBD this, CBD that. And the question is, these products, most of them seem to be imported. Have they gone through SAPRA, you know, or are these people breaking the regulations? But also the whole issue of medicinal, you know, DACA versus, so the tetrahydrocannabinol and the cannabidiol, you know. So I definitely am going to ask you, Prof, in the near future that we talk about that one and whether the decision by the courts to allow for private use is actually good from a health point of view, because some of the colleagues who are in the mental health care space are actually starting to see a lot of people who are presenting with mental illness related to, because people are saying, now I can use it at my home. So the legal side of things versus the medical side of things, just like now with COVID, it's economics, livelihood versus the lives. So I would want us to have another shot at that particular topic. But for today, I want to thank you, Prof. It's been a very enlightening, interview. And I hope everybody who's been watching, they've been empowered. So I want to thank you a lot.
Thank you so much. It was really a pleasure, you know, and I would welcome that invitation, you know, to talk about the medical cannabis.
Yes, thank you very much. I am definitely going to take you up on that one, Prof. At least I've got your numbers, I've got your emails. We will find time that is actually convenient for you to be able to give us that 1 hour. So thank you very much, Prof.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
All right. Thank you to everybody who had joined us with Prof. I hope you gained as much as I did from the information that has been shared. I want to thank you once again. Goodbye.